Pamplemousse. Okay, that was good. Okay, we did little French lessons on the video. Everything go smoothly while I was away, by the way? Just want to check. Yeah, I was back in the office this week. I was talking to somebody, and he said, things didn't really go smoothly when you were away. I said, like they do when I'm here. That's a myth, right? But, we move through. I always tell people, and, you can tell your friends this, that if they don't like organized religion, they'll love us. Because we're not very organized. But we get where we need to get, right? We go where we need to go, and we love one another along the way. So today's talk is Bumps on the Spiritual Pathway, and we'll get to that. I thought first you'd like to see some pictures from my trip. And Dorian, of course, was with me, and we were in France for just over 5 weeks. And let's see if I can do this. And you can't see the red dot on the screen. Anyway, we were up here, and then we were over here, and then we were like right in here, and then right there, and then back there. Okay. So we thought we'd show you a couple of our favorite pictures. This was like the first dinner, the first night. And, and that was before the beard. This was Dorian's, that's pigeon and peas. I know, it does, but it was really good, right? All the rest of the time we'd be walking along and the pigeons would be flying around in Paris, and I go, watch her, she just ate your cousin. You don't want to mess with her. So yeah, that was pigeon, and it was delicious. And that's my fish and so forth. So then this was another meal. We had... That's actually salmon tartare, and really delicious. That's like a little crepe that they put into a shape and then kind of flash fry. And then I had fish across the table there. And then this was a cheese platter that we had at one of the restaurants we went to. Then we went to lunch at this seafood place, and Dorian had the moulet frite, the mussels, and I had bar as a fish that they catch there in the channel. It was 5 weeks, so 3 meals a day. So they have wine in France, I discovered. And this was a wine shop, and those are all like big bottles. It was really quite an interesting display. I stood there for quite a while looking in that window. Okay, oysters from Normandy, just amazing. They're huge. The plate was like this big. It was just amazing. And then there was dessert. They had this is an apple tart. Yeah, you get pancake. And this was really fun. We went to this little cafe, and we're looking out over this beautiful intersection, and we had pommes frites, which is fried potatoes, and champagne. It's really a perfect combination because the champagne goes perfectly with the salty potatoes. I highly recommend it. That was actually a snack. It wasn't our regular meal. We had a regular meal after that. They put ketchup on the table. I'm like, really? I don't even eat that at home. I didn't know they even had ketchup in France. So this is another meal. We were at a marché. It's about this street. What's the name of the street? And the cafe was the same name. Rue Mouffetard in the Latin Quarter. Dr. Ken Gordon, the spiritual leader of Centers for Spiritual Living, and his wife, Dr. Deb, were with us for a few days. And I guess Dorian was taking the picture because she's not there. And we had a wonderful lunch. You walk along, and it's all these open-air markets and everything, and then this little cafe that sells the stuff from the markets. It was just wonderful. We had seafood platter one night. This was the only really high-end upscale meal that we had there. We usually went to regular cafes and stuff. This was incredible. 18 different kinds of oysters. That's lobster and langostino, and coquille Saint-Jacques, and we had a wonderful magnum of wine, and it was just really nice. The four of us had that. And that's the dessert, like a little chocolate cake with this like nest of chocolate over top of it in a raspberry sauce. Yeah, it was called Darth Vader. And there's a picture of the Eiffel Tower. Okay, and we can go on to the point. We took that picture of the Eiffel Tower while we were on a lunch cruise on the Seine. I have more pictures of food from Burgundy and the Loire Valley, but we didn't have time for those. So.
Another day.
Yeah, another day. We're actually going to have an evening where we took like hundreds of pictures, and we'll show some of them here one night if you'd like to come. And it won't not just be the food. But that was kind of, they do know how to eat over there. They really do. I mean, you'd have to really put a lot of energy into trying to find a bad meal. It'd be very difficult to do. So, where were we? Bumps on the spiritual pathway. Anybody ever had a problem in their life of any kind? Where things just didn't go exactly right, or, it was like 90% perfect but 10% imperfect, something like that, or the other way around, 10% perfect and 90% imperfect, or someone let you down. Anyone ever had anyone let them down? Not meet your expectations, or not return your love, or, borrow money and not pay it back, or loan you money knowing you wouldn't pay it back, that kind of thing. So we have these bumps on the spiritual pathway, and we think about how do we deal with that? Because that's really why a lot of people kind of wander into a place like this, is they've got some bumps in their life, and they're not really sure what to do about them, and you've tried everything else. So you come here. So sometimes we're in a tight spot. I don't think this has been well thought out, by the way, but but I assume they're going to use the bayonets and not shoot the guns. But sometimes you ever felt this way, and usually it's interesting when you feel this way, you're like in bed alone at night, right? And you've made up a story that says this is what my life looks like right now. So we do feel sometimes we're in a tight spot. Joseph Campbell said, the conquest of the fear of death is the recovery of life's joy. One can experience an unconditional affirmation of life only when one has accepted death, not as contrary to life, but as an aspect of life. Life in its becoming is always shedding death, and on the point of death, the conquest of fear yields the courage of life. Now, many psychologists over time, including Jung, including Freud, have said all of our fear stems from a fear of death. That all of the fears that we have about everything in our life have to do with the fact that we're afraid of our own death. And it's kind of a big question, to deal with that. It's believed we may be the only creatures alive that know we're going to die. Certainly other animals are aware of death, but we don't know that they're able to actually think about the reality that that's going to happen to them at some point too. And it is part of life, right? Because, you owe the universe a physical death if you're here. It's on your agenda. You just may not know when. I don't really mind dying. I just don't want to be there when it happens. But so quite often these other things that we're afraid of are really kind of a metamorphosis or an element of this great fear that we have. And part of spiritual growth or spiritual maturity is coming to terms, and also psychological maturity, is coming to terms with the actuality of death. Our culture, if you look at in North America and the United States, particularly in the way we look at death, we don't look at it too much other than on TV and in the movies, right? I mean, we don't. We're separated from when we eat food. We're separated from the killing of the food, and somebody said one time we buy our meat in little styrofoam coffins in the market, and we're separated from that. When someone dies, We tend to get rid of the body as quickly as we can and things like that because, well, it's not just because it's unpleasant to think about, it's because we are not psychologically prepared quite often to think about it. So this is underlying a lot of the things that we have in our own life. The idea of courage, which the Cowardly Lion exemplified to some degree in The Wizard of Oz, where when he got the medal, he all of a sudden had the authority to be brave, right? But what we fail to recognize about courage is, Osho says, courage is a love affair with the unknown. I love that concept. Courage can only exist where there's fear. See, if you're not afraid of anything, you're not being courageous. You're probably not being very intelligent either. You know, there are things to be afraid of. There are things to be aware of. Fear is something that is an evolutionary quality that we possess in order to let us know when we're in danger, when things are threatened. You see. Fear, another definition of fear I like is fear is the edge of your known reality. That anything outside of your own experience will naturally cause within you some kind of a fear response, not to get you not to do something, but to get you to pay attention. You're stepping outside of the known. Fear becomes debilitating when we create a story around it and make it more than it is. Fear of the known can be debilitating. Fear of the unknown is healthy. So I love this idea of a love affair with the unknown. Do you have a love affair with the unknown, or do you like things to be predictable? Or is it kind of a mixture? Well, I like some things to be predictable, you know. Like the Visa bill. That would be nice if that was predictable, you know. What if your Visa bill was like set up like the Powerball lottery, and they just picked 7 numbers at random or something and sent you a bill? You know, I want my zeros near the front, right? That's what you'd be thinking. Oh, well, my Visa bill's $20 million. You know, it's okay. You're not paying it anyway. What matter does it matter what it is, right? But so there are some things we want to have some certainty around. Usually finances are one of those, right? Because we can count that stuff, right? You'd like to be certain if you get a paycheck, you'd like to be certain that it's coming, you know, on Friday or whenever the payday is. Or if you have a client and you're getting a commission, you'd like to be certain they're going to pay you. Okay, but there's other areas of life where uncertainty is kind of welcome. You know, like you go to a horror movie, you want to kind of be surprised and scared, or you get on a roller coaster and you want to have that experience. See, but there are some areas of life where we don't get to pick and choose. Have you noticed? Like when you're in a relationship with someone. Anyone ever been in a relationship with another person? Okay, you want that to be sometimes you want that to be predictable, and every now and then we want it to be unpredictable, but only in a good way. You know, like surprise me with flowers, not surprise me with dating another woman, kind of a thing. So the bumps on the spiritual pathway are quite often this sense of where we want certainty and we don't get it, or we're open to uncertainty and we don't get it. If you got on the roller coaster and it just went flat along and didn't have any ups and downs, you'd probably be disappointed. Or maybe relieved, depending on, you know. They did a study once, it said that the number one thing people want in their life is certainty, and the number 2 thing is uncertainty. So we're complex in that way. Where is surprise welcome, and where isn't it? So the bumps on the pathway are quite often when, here's what happens. I create a story about the way my life's supposed to be in this particular area. And it might be relationships, it might be finances, it might be anything. And I have this underlying fear of death that's kind of down there deep inside, and it's affecting a lot of the different ways I look at things and opportunities, you know. And the story I make up is inconsistent with the likelihood of the reality of the situation. You ever done that? You ever made up a story inside that wasn't quite the way the world was presenting itself? You know, and then when the world presents itself the way it is, you feel devastated in some way, or disappointed, or disenchanted. You know, when your kids don't listen perfectly. Anybody ever had kids that didn't listen perfectly? Anyone ever been a kid that listened perfectly? No. No. So every time we do that, we do that, it's not that we're doing something out of what is normal for us to do. It's that we're bumping up against somebody else's story of the way it ought to be. So a lot of relationships is kind of the mingling of these stories. How I see life and how you see life, and can we agree to see it in the same way, at least to the extent that we can live together in a combination of certainty and uncertainty that brings us both joy. You know, knowing we're both going to die. That nothing's permanent. Nothing's permanent in terms of the extent of our life, and nothing's permanent within the shorter periods of our lives. Everything is changing, everything is growing, everything is evolving, or everything wants to. So what sometimes people come into a place like this, or they go into a spiritual place, and what they want is they're asking God, or their version of that, for, they call it peace, but what they want is certainty. You know, I want my road to smooth out for a while. I'm tired of being courageous. Being courageous is wonderful. It's an admirable quality, but it's exhausting if you have to do it a lot. You know, there are kids that grow up, they have to be courageous every day to come out of their bedroom and be with their family because it's dangerous. There are people that, you know, have jobs that are dangerous. There are people that are in relationships that the stories, the way they've commingled, have created danger, where you have to walk. You ever heard the term walking on eggshells, right? Because you don't want to upset somebody because it would be dangerous to do so. Carl Jung said, you meet your destiny on the road you take to avoid it. So the result of the fear we have, the result of the underlying fear of death and the way it shows up in kind of little fears, is that we practice avoidance quite often. We think about what don't I want to happen, and let me try to make sure that doesn't happen, rather than going forward toward what it is I would desire. And we do this in a lot of different ways. And in fact, we're encouraged to do it as we grow up in our culture, you know, where you're warned, don't go out in the street or you'll get hit and run over. Right? Which, yeah, what else do you tell a kid? Sometimes stay on the sidewalk doesn't work. You have to paint a picture, you know, of what might happen. But so the inevitability of that kind of conditioning is that we grow up being cautious in ways that maybe serve us and also in ways that don't. The biggest regret that people seem to have on their deathbed, you know, you've heard no one ever said, I wish I went to the office more, right? But the biggest regret they have is I didn't love enough, number one. And number two is I didn't express myself fully. I kept it in because I was afraid if I did express who I really was and my inner talent, it wouldn't be accepted, it wouldn't work, it would cause problems. It would make a scene. So we keep it within. You know, it's interesting to see somebody who really blossoms, like in later years in life, like, there's examples like Grandma Moses, who became an artist later in life and had this incredible talent that was withheld all that time, but they did let it out in time. You know, because we never know when it's going to end, right? I think Keats was the poet who died at 26 and was considered possibly the greatest poet of his time, and he had a 5-year career or something. And what could have been, suppose he had held his gift in until later in life, it never would have happened. So, but see, again, that's a trap too, because then you get motivated into thinking about death all the time, and that's not what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to get motivated into thinking about life. I don't want to express my talents because I'm going to die. I want to express my talents because I'm alive. But we have this incredible amount of negative motivation, of coercive motivation. Why do you drive the speed limit if you do? Or I should say when you do, because you don't want to get a ticket. That's negative motivation. And it might seem like it's intelligent, but, if you're operating most of your activities out of fear of something going wrong, there's less likelihood that anything's really wonderful is going to go right. So how do I balance and create a life that works? It doesn't put me in danger all the time, but lets me express. Well, I have to find those areas where certainty and uncertainty can be expressed in a way that works. Sometimes we're looking for certainty in areas where it can't exist. And sometimes we seek uncertainty in areas where it's very unlikely to exist. And we end up kind of stuck. When you touch a hot stove, right? A cat that jumps up onto a hot stove will never jump onto a hot stove again, but will never jump on a cold stove either. Some people get into a relationship and they get betrayed. And they say, that's it, no more relationships for me. See? Because I'm certain it'll turn out like this one. How many times have we done that in life? Said, that's it. Once burned, that's it. We usually get over that after a while. It's like when people have second children. But you forget, right? You mellow a little over time, and the memories kind of begin to dissolve a little bit, and the emotional set begins to shift, and other forces within you begin to arise and stuff. So we don't necessarily maintain that hard and fast rule all the way through, which is probably a good thing. We were in Lourdes, it's called Lourdes over there, which is a pilgrimage site, and if you watch the video, like we talked about, people go there for a miracle. It's the site of a place where a young girl named Bernadette, supposed to have seen the Virgin Mary, who appeared to her 17 times over the course of about 7 or 8 months in a grotto. And people, at some of these appearances, there would be thousands of people that came with her to see the Virgin Mary, but she's the only one that ever saw her. And at one point, the apparition is supposed to have told her to dig beneath where I stand, and you'll find water. And she began to dig, and she got into sort of I would call it a metaphysical frenzy a little bit, and dug and dug and dug and got covered with dirt and mud, and reached down, and a little bit of mud began to trickle up. And at that point, she stopped, and people said, "What are you doing? You're crazy. Look at you. She looked like a crazy woman." And she went home. The next day she went back, and there was clear water coming up she had found a spring. And today that spring is considered holy, so you can go there and you can get the water in containers, or you can actually bathe in the water in this place. They built this incredible edifice around there of 3 different basilicas, one on top of the other, and there are baths, and it's really quite a place. And about 7 million people go there a year. And there's really nothing else to do in town except get healed. That's pretty much it. There's nothing going on. There's 200 gift shops, but they all sell the same stuff. Water containers, candles, statues, rosaries, things like that. And you go out in the streets, and there's people being pushed up and down on hospital beds by nurses and pushed in wheelchairs that have come to go into the grotto. There's a line. You get in the line, you can go through the grotto, and you can go into the baths, and they have all kinds of stuff going on. There's processions there a couple times a day where thousands of people line up and march. And at the very beginning of the procession, they all come into the courtyard in front of the basilica, and the first 3 or 4 rows are all people in wheelchairs and on gurneys and things. And everyone else lines up behind them. And the church has certified 60 healings at Lourdes since 1858, I think. Only 60. But hey, 60. Now, Dorian went on a tour. I didn't go on with a priest who was kind of a postmodern priest, and he said, I would say there's probably been thousands and thousands of healings here if you consider a healing a change of consciousness. Wait a minute there, Padre. Back up a minute. What'd you just say? Yeah. 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 But he said, when you think about someone having a change of heart, a change of mind, that's a healing. Yeah. Sometimes we confuse a healing with a cure. A cure is the physical manifestation. A healing is an internal process. And you can be healed without a cure. You can also be cured without a healing, where the symptom goes away, but if the consciousness doesn't change, it will tend to arise again. So what's the purpose of stuff? What do you think the purpose of illness is? What do you think the purpose of being depressed or being angry or upset or having things go the wrong way? Is there some kind of meaning or purpose in that happening to us? And the spiritual answer is yes. It's to let you know that you need to make some kind of an adjustment within your consciousness to put yourself back on the pathway of the greatest expression. When you start to go down the wrong pathway, it's nice to have signs that let you know you're doing it. People say, I'm looking for a sign, I'm looking for a sign. How about the fact that you've had, you're a serial relationship killer? Maybe there's been a number of signs in that, where all the people that you've left behind in the dust that you've allegedly been in love with. What about the fact that you continually have these physical symptoms over time? It could be minor, it could be major. What about the fact that you continually are bumping up against bankruptcy or having that kind of an experience financially? Those are all signs that you're off track. So the question then becomes, how do I get back on track, and what's the track? Do I even know what the track is? The track is to live fully as you, whatever that is. But if I'm obsessed with dying, or I'm obsessed with things can't go wrong, or I'm obsessed with the decision I made a long time ago that life is a struggle, then I've got to continue to play that out until I'm done with it. So my suggestion is, take a few minutes and be done with that. And let's move on. Let's move on to something that's greater, that's more real, and how do I get back on the track? You use the tools in a teaching like this. You do prayer, you do meditation, you do practices of kindness, you do things every day to be in the consciousness of your best self, your most compassionate, most alive self. When you're in your most compassionate self, you are most alive. When you're withholding or resenting someone else, that's closer to being dead than alive. So we got to clean up what needs to be cleaned up. And what needs to be cleaned up is only the effects of the stories you've been telling yourself. There's nothing real or objective that needs to be cleaned up. Just the attitude. And step forward into life in a new way. You don't have to go to Lord for a miracle. What is a miracle? A miracle is simply a manifestation of something that the existing consciousness couldn't comprehend. For some of us, a miracle isn't much. It's having a good day. And your consciousness can manifest a good day and can manifest a cure for cancer as easily as one as the other. That's the truth. Well, wait a minute, I've heard different my whole life. Well, you've heard wrong. We all have. We were all misinformed along the way. We're being misinformed now. Byron Katie says, you can tell a thought is wrong because it feels bad. Got any thoughts that feel bad? They're wrong, meaning they're not true. They're not true at the essential level of who you are. Somebody said, well, don't tell me the NSA isn't looking at my Facebook page. Can you imagine Having to look at our Facebook pages all day? What a crappy job. There's somebody that needs a healing. Or somebody thinking that would be valuable to do. You know? It's absurd, right? Well, that's part of the deal. Well, being here on Earth School, you get to live in an absurd world. And it's absurd because of the stupid stories we make up and accept. You're not afraid of another person, you're afraid of their story. The guy in Santa Monica this week, I wouldn't want to have been in his head to create the story that would lead to that kind of just stupid action. How do you get there? Well, you look around and see what we watch in the media and what we play on our video games. It's pretty easy to get there if you're already inclined in that direction. What you fill your mind with, you become. So the bumps on the road are when we fill our minds with that which doesn't serve us, that which isn't true, that which isn't love. And we think if we only express love, we'll be weak and we'll be taken advantage of by those who express fear. It doesn't work that way. Fear cannot exist in the same space as love, just like darkness cannot exist in the same space as light. If you are fully in love, in a place of which is empowerment, you have nothing to fear. If I'm in fear, I'm not in love. Can't be in the same place. So the work is to build up the love. The work is to extend it and to learn to interpret the world through the eyes of love rather than the eyes of fear. To stop seeing the gunmen as being powerful. They're not. They're more scared than you'll ever be. I hope. The intimidator isn't powerful. The intimidator's afraid. And when you stand in your love, they are powerless against you. Because they can't be against you when you're in love. So the work is to take that idea and make it a reality in your own consciousness. How do we do that? We do it every day, with every thought, with every feeling. We do it in formal practice, and we do it in our own self-talk. And when we forget, and we remember that we've forgotten, we go back to it. And we hold everyone in compassion. Compassion is there, but for the grace of God go I. The grace of God is my own consciousness. One of the things we noticed in France when we would talk to folks that were from there, which was not easy, they had to speak English, but most of them do, is when they would say, well, what do you do? And I would say, I'm a minister. And they'd say, oh, you're in the government. Because over there, a minister is a government official. I'd say, no, I lead a spiritual community, and the blinds would close. The conversation was over. They weren't interested. They're in such high rejection of religion, not without merit, that they don't want to hear spirituality yet. We found a few that did, but most, no, that's okay. Let's talk about the food. Yeah, interesting. Brilliant people, well-educated people that are trying to live a life without any spiritual guidance. Because they've been burned. They've been burned. How long before you try the oven again? How long before you learn to control it? Good question. Where are you in that idea? Are you more in reject than acceptance? Are you in resentment? against someone else or for something you feel they did to you or whatever. You know, resentment is like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. It's like corrosive. How can I not resent someone who tried to harm me? Well, you have to love them and probably get the hell away from them. Probably what you have to do. Or you love them by loving yourself. And we weren't all taught that very well. But it all comes back to that. All the bumps on the road, by the way, are your teachers. Everything that goes wrong is to help you to instruct you to readjust. Get back to what you know. If a thought doesn't feel good, it's a false thought. Let's think true thoughts more and more and more. And we're not going to turn ourselves around in 24 hours. It's going to take time. You didn't get this way overnight, whatever way you are. We all have work to do. And it's kind of like a diet. Sometimes you lose the weight, but then it's the maintenance. So you lose the resentment, but then you got to keep it off. You got to keep focusing on what is good. We don't reach, success is a journey, not a destination. That really is true. Love is a journey, not a destination. Prosperity is a journey, not a destination. And the journey in this incarnation goes until we do your memorial service. Then you can stop. Or you'll be doing wherever you go after that. How do I know when to stop? You won't know when to stop. You don't stop. You live, and you live fully until that's not an option anymore. If you're alive, you're not finished. And I don't mean there's some grand plan for you. I'm just saying that you're going to live as long as you live. And you got nothing better to do than to live fully, right? Oh no, let me sit back and worry about others not living fully. I'll live fully when they do. Well, that's just dumb. And you're not dumb. You're not. Deal with it. Say this. I'm not dumb. In fact, I'm brilliant. And from this moment forward, I'm damn well going to act like it. Thank you, and namaste.